Loki, enough. No more illusions.
What makes for a good villain? It is quite a simple question, but there are a few elements that you might not think about that go into it. A good villain makes a movie great. A good villain improves the hero. And he is rare. Very rare. Which makes it 10 times better when you actually get one. Especially in something like the MCU. Today, I'm gonna be talking about the most memorable early MCU villain there is. Actually, the only memorable one. Loki, that is. But before we begin, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Also, comment down below who you think is the best villain in the MCU. Almost everyone that watched Phase 1 of the MCU can agree that Loki was the best villain it had. And so, I want to tell you why. A lot of people might think that the reason why Loki is so good is because of Tom Hiddleston, the actor that portrayed him, and his performance.
No, you took me for a purpose. What was it? Tell me!
And while that is partly true, Loki as a character was written extremely well, especially in the movie Thor. And based off a few very simple yet very important things, we can deduce what made the character work so well. So first and foremost, we have motivation. One of the most important elements of character that any good villain should have.
I never wanted the throne! I only ever wanted to be your equal.
Charm. That is an element I want to talk about that was mostly done by Tom Hiddleston's magnificent performance. And lastly, relatability. I'll talk about that soon. So, motivation. Unlike any other MCU villains back then, like Abomination in The Incredible Hulk, or Red Skull in the first Avenger, even Jeff Bridges, in Iron Man. Unlike any of these guys, Loki's character motivation is very simple. All he wants is the love of his father and to be an equal to his brother.
Why have you done this? To prove to father that I am a worthy son.
That's it. That is all he wants. Unlike these other guys who want something grand like power for themselves, or not to stop selling weapons so they can make the big money, what Loki wants, what Loki needs, is something fair to him. What makes him what you might call a bad guy is how he goes about achieving his goal. For example, lying to his brother about his father dying, or killing his real birth father to earn the respect of Odin, his adopted father. Whatever it may be, Loki is the only humanized villain in those first few movies. Which is ironic, considering he's the only god of the bunch. Which brings me to relatability. As I said, Loki isn't really evil. He's a good person that is doing some really shitty things for some pretty selfish reasons. And one of the most obvious elements that indicate that is guilt, shame. Many times throughout the movies, Loki shows guilt for what he's doing, and even tries to make up for it, which in turn makes him a lot more human to us, which makes him more relatable, in a sense that the emotions Loki feels, almost all of us can relate to. We've all experienced the feeling of being inferior to a sibling or friend sometimes, or getting the feeling that our parents might not love us sometimes. But we'd mostly be wrong, as Loki was. But we experience shit like that nevertheless. Loki isn't really a villain. He's an anti-hero, if you say. which actually is almost always the better way to go with your villain, not trying to make them completely evil. And lastly, charm. That is a fairly easy thing to explain. Tom Hiddleston was hands down the best actor that could have been picked for Loki, and he portrayed him almost perfectly. But seriously though, the charm of Loki really comes from his unpredictability. You never really know what he might do next, which keeps you intrigued. That is what's so good about an anti-hero. He might do something good next. He might do something bad. You never really know. Compare that to Malekith in Thor: The Dark World, and you'd have yourself a really big difference. I would be surprised if you actually even remember Malekith. Why that is because he is the epitome of evil. There is nothing under the surface for his character. There are no layers. Yes, Malekith is a very powerful villain, but power isn't what makes for a good villain. Malekith's goal in the Dark World is to destroy the universe. Why, you might ask? I don't remember either. But I didn't even have to watch Thor again to remember what Loki's goal was. So, in the grand scheme of things, I would rate the writing of Loki's character as a 10 out of 10, baby. Yeah, for sure. And I would classify Tom Hiddleston's, although not perfect, but pretty impressive performance as Loki 11 out of 10, baby. Hell yeah.